Let's talk to God. One more thing, like, subscribe, and share. Come on, let's talk to God. Woo!
Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Cutler here on the Let's Talk to Cutler broadcast. It's the 13th of July, and that means that we're looking at a Thursday already. Wow. A Thursday already. And it means that we're here at the end of the week. And I don't know about you all, but I'm glad to have made it this far. I'm glad that I am still on this side of the grave. I'm just happy and thankful to see another day. I don't know about you all, but sometimes I just show up and I am just happy. It's not that I won the lottery, got a new house, a new car, or a new job or raise or anything, but I'm happy, I'm content, I'm glad to be here, and I'm thankful to be alive. I'm thankful to be breathing, and I'm thankful to share this moment with good people like you all, this 1800 seconds. So if you're stopping by for the first time and you're wondering, what is this guy up here talking about? Just know that this station, this channel, this platform is about inspiration, it's about motivation, and it is about challenging ourselves to show up better tomorrow than we did today. It's about challenging ourselves to see if we've shown up better today than we did yesterday. And all things considered, it's about doing our best. It's about making the effort, putting in the work, being intentional and deliberate about trying to show up and show up my best self, even in the worst that would challenge the core of who I am. But it is through conversations like this, it is through rehearsed dialogues, it is through meaningful exchanges that we learn how to show up our best selves, even in the worst of situations. I hope I'm helping somebody already. So this channel, this station is about inspiration, it's about motivation, and it is about challenging ourselves. Sometimes we don't like the challenge. I'm good with the motivation, I'm good with the inspiration, but the challenge is, Cutler, I don't know about that, because that sort of takes me out of my comfort zone. That puts me in this area of dis-ease. But I promise you, you will never grow when you're completely comfortable. Comfortability is the opposite of, or consistent comfortability is the opposite of growth. That is why there's such a thing as growing pains. I'll get to my conversation in just a moment, but I will never forget when I was 13, and my birthday is in the summer, and when I was making the transition from 13 to 14, I was also making the transition from junior high school to high school. I grew 3 inches that summer. So my classmates who saw me at our 8th grade graduation then saw me when the school year began in the 9th grade, and they looked and said, "What in the world happened to you?" I literally grew an inch a month. And can I tell you, I remember how painful it was. And I was just thinking, what in the world is going on? It was something that I had never experienced, but it was literally growing pains. And when you're always in a place of comfort, you won't necessarily grow the way that you could, not to the fullest of your extent, not to the fullest of your possibility, not to the fullest of what you're capable of doing. So it's okay to be uncomfortable sometimes. That's what I'm saying. We'll get started. We'll get into the dialogue, but I just want you to know that it is okay to be uncomfortable sometimes when it is for a good thing. It really is. I want to talk about how to care for me this evening. I want to talk about that because the last time we were here, we talked about this whole notion of hanging on to your hope. I'm so intentional about hanging on to hope because as we're moving into the second half of the year, you all, and we've crossed the threshold from June into July. And so now we're in the second half of the year. And the question is, what am I expecting? What am I looking for? What am I hoping for? What are my aspirations? What is it that I desire? What victories am I looking for? What successes am I trying to gain? What dreams am I hoping turn into realities? What am I hoping for? And one of the things that we talked about in terms of hanging on to your hope was making sure that you care for yourself. And I wanted to grow that. I wanted to build on that. I wanted to expound on that. I wanted to examine that with just a little more profundity than I did the last time, because there's something to be said about caring for yourself. A lot of times we don't know how to care for ourselves. Let's slow down just a moment. A lot of times, you all, we don't know how to care for ourselves. We know how to care for everybody else, everything around us, but we will put ourselves on the back burner. Why do we sacrifice ourselves sometimes for the cause of other people, for the sake of other people. I know it's a good thing to do. It sounds wonderful. It sounds so humanitarian. It sounds so noble. It sounds so civil. But you cannot be your best self for anybody. When you're no good to other people when you haven't taken care of yourself. I just want to put that out there. You're no good for other people when you have not taken care of yourself, when you have disregarded yourself, when you have ignored yourself, when you have just ignored yourself is really what I'm trying to say. You have to be careful about that. So I want to talk about how to care for me. What does self-care, what does self-love really look like? I'll talk about that in just a moment. But before I get into the depths of that, I want to remind you, if you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Go ahead, and once you subscribe, make sure that you click on the notification bell, because it lets you know whenever I've gone live. It lets you know whenever I've uploaded new content, that sort of thing. And then make sure that when you come on, that you tell somebody else, come on, let's talk a color, because what is the guy talking about? He's really trying to help save somebody's life. He really is. This is an 1,800-second segment that we spend together, and I'm just offering these nuggets. But while I'm offering these nuggets, I'm also looking in the chat to see who's chatting with me and what are you all saying back to me, because while I think I'm offering something positive, something uplifting, something optimistic, and something upbeat, it is my hope to look in the chat from time to time and see just a nugget from you all. So let me just go over to the chat for just a moment and recognize the LTTC VIPs. Those are the people that I call the Let's Talk the Color, very important people. Of course, everybody's important to me. Whenever you show up, whenever you do the replay, whenever you send me your text messages, your emails, that sort of thing, you're always important. But just for the sake of fun and friendly banter, the LTTC VIPs are the people who jump into the chat early. Sometimes they beat me in the chat before I get a chance to say hello. They're in the chat and they just send hello and get aboard and good evening, everybody. So they're saying that. So let me take a look and see who's over in this chat. The VIPs for this evening are Bobby Dunmore, Annie Cutler, and Hattie Boone. It is so good to see all of you, but those are the LTTC VIPs this evening. Why did I decide that I want to talk about how to care for me? Again, because as we are progressing and we're marching and we're moving toward the end of the year, I don't want it to be lost on us that we need to take care of ourselves while we're helping so many people, while we're undergirding so many people, while we're supporting so many causes and events and people. Don't forget to support and undergird yourself. Don't forget to look out for you so that you can be your best self, even in the worst of situations, so that you can present your best self to help somebody else. I'm telling you, the person that I want to help somebody else is the best version of me. I don't want a watered down, weak version of me trying to help anybody, because I may not make the impression that I want to make. I want the best version of me to show up when somebody says, hey, Cutler, I need some help. I want the best version of me to show up when my brother or my sister is weak and I need to offer them strength. I want the best version of me to show up when I'm trying to help somebody along the way, when I'm trying to offer counsel or guidance or advice of any sort. How about you all? Don't you want the best version of you to show up when people need something? Because I don't want to shortchange anybody of anything that I have. I want the very best version of me to show up and give them what I have. So I want to talk about caring for self. How do I care for me? How to care for me? And a lot of people say, well, Cutler, why in the world do you think it's important to talk about self-care? What is this whole notion of self-care? Well, let me tell you what self-care is not. And before I talk about what self-care is not, you all tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, you all have to help me out while you're here in the chat. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at self-care? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at self-care, with 1 being poor, not really good at all, and 10 being exceptionally good? How good are you at self-care? And I'll read the chats, I'll read the numbers, I'll see how you rank yourself, because I want us to think about this thing. And sometimes we have to stop and think, how good am I at self-care? How much attention do I pay to taking care of myself? Because self-care is just not about stress relief. It's not about doing something nice for yourself occasionally. Self-care is about making a conscious, and I want you all to hear this, you all, and I want you to think about this and think about how you're rating yourselves, because the truth of the matter is a lot of people really don't stop to think about what self-care is and how important it is. But self-care is not just about stress relief. I said that. And there's a key word in the second thing I said. I said that self-care is not about doing something nice for yourself occasionally. No, 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 no. Self-care is about making a conscious, and may I say consistent effort to promote your own physical, mental, and emotional health. That's what self-care is about. The key word there is conscious and consistent effort. It's not about doing something for yourself occasionally. It's not just about an occasional stress relief. But what that means, it means that you have to sometimes put in the work to care for yourself. Don't you put in the work to care for other people and other things? Self-care means that you sometimes have to put in the work, you all. It means you have to be committed to bettering you. What am I saying? I'm saying that means you have to make you a priority. And you don't have to make you a priority at the sacrifice of everybody else. You don't have to do that. But it does mean that you have to make you a priority. And unfortunately, some people think when it comes to health, when it comes to self-care, they think, well, my view of self-care is that it's a luxury thing. It's about going to a spa. It's about getting my toes done. It's about getting my nails done. It's about getting the facials, it's about getting that. That is included in it. But the issue here is that a lot of people will look at self-care as a luxury rather than a priority. Self-care ought to be more than just a luxury. It ought to be a priority. Because when people just make it a luxury, oh, I'll treat myself and I'll do something for myself occasionally, that's just this luxurious perspective that they give it. And what happens when they look at it as a luxury instead of a priority is that they end up feeling, those are the same people who end up feeling overwhelmed. And then they need to read my book on When I'm Overwhelmed. They end up feeling tired and they end up feeling ill-equipped and not capable of handling life's changes. And life is going to change inevitably, unavoidably. Life is going to change. But when people look at self-care as a luxury, something that is temporary, something that is fleeting, something that is occasional, they don't know how to handle life's inevitable challenges. And as we know, you all know I'll come up with a hymn every now and then, but as we know, life and time is filled with swift transitions. Life is dynamic, life is changing, and we've got to be capable of handling the changes. And self-care then is vital, it's important, it is critical, it is pivotal, it is important, you all, because what does it do? It helps you to build this kind of resilience against the things that would otherwise stress you out, against the things that would cause your blood pressure to go up, things that would cause you to sometimes stroke out. But self-care is vital for building up resilience against all of those things. Because some of the things that we handle, some of the things that we go through, some of the things that we tolerate, some of the things that we allow really could be eliminated if we were involved in consistent health, safe self-care. Let's see how people ranking themselves. I see 9.5, 6, 8.5, exercise, walk, and eat right daily, and 8. So I see all of these scores, and I want you to think about it. Because there are many forms that good self-care can take. Again, when I mentioned the spa, when I mentioned the massages, when I mentioned all that stuff, those are parts of healthcare. Good self-care could simply ensure that you get the proper sleep every night. Can I tell you, I'm guilty of that? I'm so guilty of that. I'm guilty of not getting the proper amount of sleep every night. I could tell a story, I could tell a sidebar, but I don't want to get diverted. But I may come back and share that. But it is important to get proper sleep every night, you all. That's self-care. Self-care could look like going outside to get some fresh air. I saw you, McDinah, when you put exercise, walk, eat right daily. But self-care could include just going outside to get a breath of fresh air. Every few minutes, just step outside and inhale through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. It can mean taking the time to do the things that you enjoy. Self-care takes on so many forms, but it is important. However you do it, it's important to do it. Because one of the things that you want to do is ensure that you're taking care of you. You want to make sure that you have prioritized you. And when I say you, I mean mind, body, soul, and spirit. You want to make sure that you're doing the very best, that you're direct, that you're deliberate, and that you're intentional about taking care of you. You've got to do it. Bobby Dunmore, I see you said, well, my number just dropped. I don't get enough sleep. Here we are at 8.5. You went from a 9.5 to an 8.5. I'm telling you all, this is important. It is so important. And sometimes people say, well, what does it look like? How do I do that? Some self-care is not just about this, but it does include taking time to relax. Giving yourselves a physical, a mental, an emotional, a social, and a spiritual break every now and then. Some of us are just we are just on the trajectory. We have this inertia whereby we were set on course and we haven't stopped. I think it sounds wonderful when people say, I'm running and I ain't got tired yet. Well, sometimes you do get tired. And if you have the capability of running and never get tired, I know it sounds good. But when are you going to renew? When are you going to refresh? When are you going to revive? When are you going to revamp? When are you going to reinvigorate? When are you going to refresh? When are you going to do anything? If you're constantly running and constantly moving, you have got to find a way to take a break, to take care of yourself and give yourself, like I said, a mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, social break. It's good for your well-being. It's important to find a balance with all of those facets of who you are. And sometimes you may need more self-care in one area than you do in the other. A lot of times we may think that we're doing good in the area of physical self-care. So, okay, I'm doing good in physical self-care, but what about my emotional self-care? What about my mental self-care? What about my spiritual self-care? We have to think about it. What about my social self-care? When it comes to physical, we're working on that. We're doing good. We're taking care, at least we're trying to take care of our bodies because we want our bodies to run efficiently. And so you have to keep in mind that, all right, I have this one body and I've got to take care of it. It includes fueling my body. It's about how much sleep I get. It's about making sure that I eat the right things. It's about making sure that I'm hydrated. It's about all of those things, making sure that I get good exercise. That we have the physical, many of us, down pat. But what about my mental, psychological, spiritual, and social self-care? What does that look like? How are we doing with self-care in those areas? Even when it comes to social self-care, am I connected to the right people? Because close connections really are important for your well-being. I've said this before, that some of my greatest blessings in life have come because of my connections to people and how I treat people. It doesn't mean that they necessarily gave me anything, but I truly believe that some of the greatest people, some of the greatest things that I am to be a steward over are the people who come in and out of my life. And I think that life's greatest rewards have come because of how I treated people, how I cared about people, how I was concerned about the effects and the impacts of my words on people. I'm telling you all, connections are important. And the best way, and remember I said this, we have to put the work in. The best way to cultivate and maintain, because you want to cultivate and maintain close relationships. And the best way to do this, you all, we don't want to hear this, but one of the best ways to cultivate and maintain close relationships is to put in the time and energy. What does that mean, Color? That means put in the work. You have to build relationships. You have to nurture relationships. You have to take care of relationships. You've got to do the work. You have to be concerned about the impact of your words on people. You have to be concerned about the impact of your actions on other people. You've got to be concerned. And I'm not saying it has to torment you. You can't go to sleep because, some people are manipulating your mind and all that. But as an individual, as a human being, you want to be concerned about how you treat people. Be concerned about the connections that you have with people, who you let in your life and whose life you try to go into. Have to ask yourself when it comes to my social self-care, am I getting enough face-to-face time with my friends? And that's one of the things that the pandemic did for us. It interrupted our ability to be socially well. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to talk about that. And again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm just coming to you from the perspective of someone who lived through, who had experiences, and who observed life and what life has done to us. Some of us were not socially well during the pandemic because we were not getting enough face-to-face, physical face-to-face time with our friends and our loved ones. My mother and I used to travel internationally every year. But when the pandemic hit, for several months, I didn't even get a chance to see her because I did not want to run the risk of having been around somebody or perhaps an airborne disease or whatever was going on. I didn't want to run the risk of then taking that to my mother and my grandmother. So I was concerned. I stayed quarantined in my house, didn't see family or friends. I'll tell you a funny story. So much so until I tried to do everything by myself, you all. I broke out the clippers and tried to cut my hair and just do all of my grooming and all that kind of stuff until one of my friends said, I'll come over. I'll cut your hair. I'll put on a mask and you'll be okay. But you're not going to become Grizzly Adams sitting in that house, not going out to take care of yourself. And for that, I'm eternally thankful. But that was a moment, and it was about social self-care. Social self-care. And I want to challenge you. I want to ask you, of course, you may have the physical piece down, but what about socially? Are you engaged in social self-care? Are you engaged in mental self-care? The way you think and the way that you're feeling with your mind. That's mental health. That's mental self-care. I'm not talking about health care, but I'm talking about self-care, caring for yourself. The way you fill your mind with things. What are you filling your mind with? What are you spending your time thinking about? What are you spending your time reading? What are you spending your time looking at? You have to ask yourself all of these things because mental self-care, it involves doing things that help you to stay mentally healthy. Journaling, I agree, journaling helps. Mental self-care, can I say that again? Mental self-care involves doing things that help you stay mentally alert and mentally healthy. So when it comes to practicing self-compassion and acceptance, that helps you maintain this healthy inner dialogue. And as you're thinking about your mental self-care, ask yourself, am I making time to do things that are mentally stimulating? Am I making time to do things that are mentally stimulating? Or am I in a rut where I don't do things that challenge me mentally, that don't stimulate me mentally, that don't cause me to think, that don't cause me to tap into my intellectual arsenal? Because all of your activities can't just be physical activities. All of your activities can't just be social activities, you all. But we've got to engage in things that stimulate us mentally. As my grandmother was developing dementia, as she was dealing with Alzheimer's, and she was in the early stages, one of the things that we did, we wanted to get her exercises that would stimulate her mentally, that would challenge her mentally. So we put these puzzles in front of her because puzzles make you think. Puzzles make you think how the pieces come together. They make you go into this notion of trying to develop some rationale about how the pieces connect, how they go together. Are these colors matching? Are these squares? Are these corners? Are these borders? What are this? Is this part of the sky? Is this part of the water? Is this part of the building? Is this part of a bird? And so you have to rationalize, and puzzles deal with your mental stimulation. And I'm not suggesting that everybody has to go out and deal with jigsaw puzzles, although I like puzzles. But I'm telling you, you all engage in something that stimulates you mentally. Do not sit around and just look at TV and watch those repeats and those replays all the time. You just can't do that. There are people, their loved ones in my lives, every time I walk in their houses, they're watching the same thing over and over and over. And I say to them, I'm sure you could probably quote those lines. You know exactly what's going to happen. You know those characters, you've seen them 20 years, but I'm challenging you all. And that comes from a place of love. Stop watching the same thing over and over and over. Oh, well, that's just entertainment. Yes, it's entertainment, but is there anything that challenges you? Is there anything that stimulates your mind? And it has to be more than just one thing. Force yourself to look at something new, because if I look at something new, there's a new way of thinking. There's something new that I have to think about. There's a new plot that I have to try to figure out and unfold. There are new characters that I now have to try to get to meet on this show. It's mentally stimulating. Oh, you all are really funny in the chats this evening. You all are really funny in the chats this evening. Oh my God. Well, listen. Somebody just said, I'm not calling any names. Somebody said, are you talking about me? Heart, heart, love, love. You might fit in that category, as well as some of your other relatives and some of my other relatives. But I'm telling you all, I want us to engage. Dumbo, you said it drives you crazy. I want us to engage you all in mental self-care. And again, it means putting in the work. It means loving yourself, making yourself a priority, whereby you say, you know what, let me not fall in that mold. Let me not fall into that mold. Because now I realize self-care is important, not just my physical self-care, but my mental self-care, my social self-care, my spiritual self-care. My spiritual self-care is important. And nurturing your spirit, it's not always about religion. That's a critical part of it. But it can involve anything that helps you develop this deeper sense of meaning and understanding and connection with life in general. Because we are more than just physical. But what about connecting with life? What about connecting and understanding what's going on? What about finding this meaning of how I connect, how I belong, how am I a piece of the puzzle? What is purpose? What is destiny? All of that has to do with your spiritual self-care, and you can't put it on the back burner. Your emotional self-care is important. All of this is important, you all. Having healthy coping skills to deal with some uncomfortable, there's that word again, uncomfortable emotions. Because I can tell you this, anger is not a comfortable emotion, not for me. Anxiety is not a comfortable emotion, not for me. Sadness is not it is not a comfortable emotion for me. And I have to learn coping skills to deal with these uncomfortable emotions. So whether you want to include people in your life and have resources and people to tap into, when you're assessing your emotional self-care, you have to ask yourself, do I have ways to process my emotions? Do I incorporate other activities into my life to help me bring a sense of balance and to help recharge me when I'm dealing with uncomfortable and negative emotions? I'm just offering us these things so that we can reduce our anxiety, so we can reduce depression, so that we can reduce the stress and we can improve our sense of resilience, and so we can improve the times and our levels of happiness, and so that we can increase our energy, so that we can reduce burnout. That's why I'm talking about self-care, you all. So we can have stronger interpersonal relationships. This is why I'm talking about self-care. Don't you want to lessen and lower your anxiety, lessen and lower your depression, get rid and reduce some of the stress in your life, improve your ability to bounce back, your ability to have resilience? Don't you want to improve your amount of happiness, your depth of joy? Increase your energy and your drive and your strength and your sense of worth. Don't you want to do all that? Don't you want to reduce burnout? You want to stop feeling tired and fatigued all the time? You want to feel sharp and intellectually stimulated, and you want to be aware, and you want your reflexes to be as sharp as ever. Don't you want all of that? It is about self-care. And I challenge us, I got to get out of here. I challenge us this evening to do the work. Step outside of your comfort zone, do the work, make you a priority. I wish somebody would put in the chat as we leave, I'm worth it. I'm worth the work. I'm worth the work, Cutler. I hear you, man. I am worth the work of making me a priority, stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm worth the work. Because you are. Care for you, you all. Make you a priority. Even if you are a caregiver, caretaker, care provider, don't forget to take time for you and make you a priority. Thank you all for allowing me to come into your homes and wherever you've allowed me to come into. Your living room, dining room, your balconies, or wherever you are, your car, your porch, while you're walking, wherever. Thank you all for this. Don't forget to make you a priority, because you are worth the work. You are worth the work. Stop staying in the comfort zone. Get out of the comfort zone. Engage in self-care, because you're worth the work. And if no one has told you that recently, you are worth the work. Yes, you are. Marissa, you're worth the work. Hattie Boone, you're worth the work. Annie Cutler, you're worth the work. Paula, you're worth the work. Bobby Dunmore, you're worth the work. Medina, you're worth the work. All of you, you are worth it. You are worth the, put in the work, you all. And let's keep doing what we do. Let's keep building community. Let's keep maintaining connectivity. Let's stay safe and stay sane. Keep your heads up and keep your hopes up. And know that from my heart to yours, there is and always will be so much love. Listen, tell somebody the next time we're here to come on and let's talk to Cutler. We only spend about 1,800 seconds, but I try to not waste your time. I try to offer you something to remind you to invest in you, so that you could show up your best self, even in the worst of situations. I'll see you the next time I see you. And until then, tell somebody else, come on and let's talk to Cutler. Good night.